What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Coffee with Cory. I'm your host, Cory Smith, here with Matt Chazanow, play-by-play announcer for both men's basketball and football for the Wolfpack Sports Radio. Matt, first of all, how are you doing, sir?
I'm good, buddy. Good to talk to you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we do these authentically. I try to do them actually the morning of. So we're discussing all of this the morning after another late night. I know you had a football game on Saturday, which was an extremely late night, and then a basketball game yesterday. How are you holding up, man?
Man, it's awesome. I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. I love this time of year. It's unsustainably busy, but for a brief little window and for great reasons. And what a 72 hours for the Pack with the win over Georgia Tech and the opener over NC Central. I mean, it's basically all you could ask for. So it's awesome.
Yeah, well, top of mind for most people after last night, obviously, the men's basketball team now at this point, winning against NC Central, 114-66. A massive win. I think it was expected that it would probably be a blowout, but the fact that you score 114 points, which is the most by any NC State team since 2017-2018, also 19 3-pointers, matched the program record. Jordan Snell hits the final one, so he'll forever be in the record books for that. I think Will Wade joked about that last night, but you've had a chance to see this program, for the last several months, and obviously, a completely new regime. But how much was that kind of like a come to fruition moment for NC State last night, where they finally are able to put everything that they've worked on all off season out on the court and finally see that excitement from the fans too?
I think if you put that much work into something for that long and you hyper bond with a group of guys and you go through Will Wade's Navy SEAL regimen in the off season and you're putting in, sweat and blood and tears, maybe literally in these instances, you
All at the same
do
time.
eventually need a. What's that now?
I said all at the same time, the blood, sweat, and tears. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, my phone hung up for a second. Oh, I agree. Right. It's a lot. And so I think you need a payoff in the end, right, to validate the effort. But I do think that one of the things that Will Wade's done really well is he's made every player on the roster, from Darian Williams and Van Allen Lubin to Jordan Snell, feel like if they produce, they'll play. And if you are late or not working or missing weight room or whatever it might be, that you're a candidate to lose playing time or whatever it might be. It's a meritocratic hierarchy, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're out there, and not just a what have you done for me lately. Like, I don't think he's hooking guys impatiently. I just think he really values and creates a data-driven culture of efficiency and effort and work, and then the playing time reflects that. So I really am impressed by not just the output and the result, but the process that I've observed to get there, the way that the assistants, training staff, the nutrition, everybody seems to be genuinely valued. The general manager and the assistant general manager, like, all these things they all have their legitimate roles, and then the players know it. And the guys seem to get along great. They really genuinely like each other. Jerry Dang, post game, after I talked to Coach Wade on the air, was thoughtful and reflective in his answers, probably because Will Wade is thoughtful and reflective in his answers. Right? It's very candid and it's straightforward, and in that way, it's awesome. And I don't want to say it's necessarily just refreshing. It's just substantive, is what it is. So it's great.
Yeah, I can't wait for Jerry Ding to have a breakout game, because he's a great quote. Love to get him at the podium sometime soon. But the whole offseason, obviously on-court results are going to be what they're going to be. We'll see what that ultimately produces. But talking to Chucky Brown, which I want to ask you about him in just a second, but talking to him, one of the things that he said about watching this program was the fact that, like, Will Wade, more than any coach at NC State in a long time, has just been very, like, invested in NC State, very invested in wanting to be a part of the community, wanting to be, part of the culture. How much have you seen that change over the last few months, and how much have you seen him kind of, just out there and presenting himself more so than just being the NC State basketball coach and sitting back?
Yeah, I think I don't want to misspeak and say firsthand so much. Before tip off, I was all into football, and I saw some of the media output, and I was at practices, and the level of his community involvement feels real. I didn't see it firsthand. Not that it didn't happen. I just don't want to misrepresent. Sometimes I wear two hats. I know some stuff behind the curtain, and can or can't share some competitive balance information or competitive advantage information, and then other times it's kind of an impression. The impression I get in that regard is that's spot on. I think it may be even more accurate to say it was specifically that there's an undeniable commitment to not just the job in the basketball sense, but kind of what it means to be the NC State men's basketball coach in the Triangle, in the community, and maybe even nationally, because he has such a bi-coastal reputation for winning. This is his fifth stop. He's won at every one, and Pack seems to be off and running after game one, right? So I think that there is a certain amount of time, a certain amount of energy and focus that is undeniable and admirable, and he's all in, and it's not like smoke and mirrors, and I don't mean to say that it ever was previously or is in other places. It's real. Like he's in the building all the time. He is he's pouring over the data, and I see his prep. I saw, I was there, the team walkthrough, saw how they kind of broke down the film and got ready for NC Central. And so I agree with the spirit of that, the specificity of it. I'll ask him on our show tomorrow night. But I do agree with that. I mean, he's around and he's in town, and it's pretty fun.
Little shameless plug there. What time is that show tomorrow? Is it at 7 o'clock?
6 o'clock live at the Pit. Absolutely shameless plug. 6 o'clock at the Pit, downtown Raleigh. We're live, and then we'll take a break and go back to football, and then we'll start the shows back up with Will Thursdays in ACC play.
Yeah. And one of the things I want to ask you too, obviously you got to see some big environments last year. Several of the ACC games, there were a ton of fans in the stands, despite, the struggles that the team went through. But last night, I described it on our podcast afterwards as what felt like almost like a postseason atmosphere. And obviously, the fact that you have a ton of fans in the stands, you had, well over 18,000. Obviously there was some spots where people weren't able to make it, and it didn't end up being like a full sold out crowd. But the pyrotechnics beforehand, the pregame intro, all these different things that played into it, and then Will Wade coming out for the first time to the massive ovation that he did. It just, that felt like a different atmosphere than what I've seen from Lenovo Center in a while. Just wanted to get your impression on what that felt like for you being in the stadium as well.
Yeah, I don't have a ton of Lenovo Center perspective in terms of duration. I just have last year. I'd been there before years and years ago against Pittsburgh, and it was a good crowd. I do have a lot of national perspective. I've been to a ton of different arenas, especially out west. And Lenovo Center, when full, is so impressive because it's so big. It's the 8th biggest building in America in college basketball, and really we're splitting hairs as to the 2nd through the 10th, right? There basically are 10 or 15 of these buildings that are massive, that some teams would never want to play in, but other teams like NC State can fill and make loud and make it this incredible environment. Last night was one of those times. So it's big time. It's 5,000 more seats than in Tucson. McHale Center's 14,000, and that's the best environment in the West. Gonzaga is a lot smaller. It's a 3-wall, really. It's 4, wraparound, but it's a smaller gym, small private school in Spokane. They do a great job. UCLA was dead last night against Eastern Washington, which is super typical. So, NC State's atmosphere, this is true in Carter Finley too. And that was the incredible part about this job and this place is I love using the crowd as the main character of the home broadcast. This is not just, this is certainly not about me. And it is to some degree about Chucky because he was out there. But really, it's about the players, the coaches, and above all, the 19,000 folks that were there, right? And so that sound, I mean, Vin Scully said famously that of all the things that he would miss whenever he was going to stop, and this was toward the back end of his career, he said there's just nothing like the roar of a crowd. And if we're doing that broadcast with nobody there, then this conversation is very different, even with the same score last night, right? Like, this is about fans. This is about the incredible support of the Pack. I say that it kind of sounds like I'm like brown nosing, the fan base. I mean it wholeheartedly. It's an unbelievable environment. There are others that do a great job, but I don't know anybody that does a definitively better job. You could go all around the country from Rupp Arena to, like I said, McHale and Tucson. There are just some places that do it right. And Madison Square Garden went full and rocking, and I've been there many times and covered many games, right? Last night, Lenovo Center, opener for the Will Wade era, that's as good as it's going to get, So I continue to be impressed by Wolfpack Nation and home and road fan support, right? Like the crowd at Wake Forest this year made a difference. I think that helped NC State's defense get that win. There was a lot of red in Winston-Salem, so it's just an incredible fan base, and they were really doing their stuff last night in Raleigh. It was awesome.
Yeah, one of the aspects I wanted to point out too was it wasn't just the beginning. Like I mentioned the intros and all the different stuff, but like when the free chicken happened, with less than 8 minutes, I mean, it erupted again. Jordan Snell checks in the game. Everybody's chanting. Everybody realizes Colt Langdon and I'm blanking. Sneed as well. Alan Breed checks in, and then like I said afterwards, when Snell checked in, the fans went crazy again. He hits a 3-pointer, and that was probably the loudest we had heard it, was between the chicken and that. So those types of moments, just, that's part of what makes, NC State fans so fun, is the fact that, they're just invested 24/7 in this program. All right, moving over to the football side of things, though, I wanted to ask you, that breakthrough moment Saturday night. Look, I'm a member of the media. I wrote about the struggles that NC State's gone through early on in the season, or midway through the season. I've written about the discussions that are going on, and all this different stuff, the rumors and things like that. But Saturday night was different. Like, Saturday night was a breakthrough moment for Dave Doran, for this program, and so much, so needed. What was the, how different were the vibes, I guess, really, compared to where things were last week to, post game afterwards on Saturday?
I'll be honest, like with the broadcast and the way I prep for the broadcast, the way I interact with coaches and players through the week, the way I talk to Tony and Johnny and Jeff and Andrew and the way I have my process, and it's a bye week this week, so I'm not in it, right? So yeah. I could get specific with you. I think we talked about it a little bit when I got hired. Like, how do I do football a little bit? Like, I do this data dump, and then I go to practice. I've got some interviews, and I've got my ears open, and I kind of just try to be a wallflower and observe, figure out what's going on, all that stuff. I kind of stay out of the fray of a lot of the off-field discourse, and I do that on purpose, and I try to do it like intentionally, mentally. I didn't prep for that game differently than I prep for ECU or Campbell, to be totally honest. Like, I have this way that I do it. And so for me, I try to go in mentally with this clean slate. Not that I'm unaware of context and perspective around these games. I'm not ignorant of that, and that's important. I can't go into this like every game's 0-0 in the record, right? That matters too. But what I'm trying to say is like there's another version that now doesn't sound like nonsense, which is to say like, well, hang on a second. The Virginia Tech loss was really close.
Yeah.
Right. The Duke loss was a couple of plays away from flipping, and it's like, well, wait, what could the record be on the other side of it? You know what I mean? Like, what's the more optimistic version of it? And that holds true also. I thought the game plan was fantastic. They recognized, Georgia Tech's rush defense statistically was not great coming into that game. And they clearly had a sense that Duke Scott could do big things. It popped early, and then they fed him, right? And so, no Hollywood, and Duke was obviously the best he's been in his career. He was great, but the vibes were awesome. I mean, it was like a big party, I mean, if I'm going to try to do this right with all that context, if I can be an informed kind of tastemaker for the fan base a little bit, because I have this great access and this wonderful time that I can talk to coaches and Dave and player here or there and through the week, like we talked to Dante Daniels and Cade Noonkester and the show and all this stuff. If I'm gonna glean like what the plan is and what they're doing with it, the sense of it, especially like mid-third quarter, was like, I think they got it.
Yeah.
It was like I don't. This doesn't feel fluky. Like I think they're going to beat Georgia Tech, and again, it would be wrong. I'll always think back on that game, not just for the field rush, but for the in-game environment, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like Carter Finley's popping again, 25th consecutive sellout, places rocking, makes a massive difference. It's a very hard place to come in and get a win, and road games are hard. And Georgia Tech wasn't great on the road their other three games. They should have lost in Winston-Salem, and they were barely out with a win in Boulder after 3 early fumbles, I think, in that ball game. So, and even the Duke game, they kind of escaped. So, especially first half. So, it was great. It was great. It's great is what it was. It was fun. Your question really was about like vibes, and it was awesome. And I was really happy for those kids, and the coaches poured their hearts into this thing. So I try to reflect that, and it was really fun.
And obviously we've obviously seen over the past few weeks, CJ Bailey go through some struggles on the road, but he got a big moment as well this past week where I think now at this point there's just about every national award that you can possibly get because of what he did, but didn't really seem like it was that much of a different game for him. It was just gaining that confidence early, guys making difficult catches at times. There was several contested catches in this game. I mean, what was it like to see him kind of have his another breakthrough moment for him? Because yes, there were some breakthrough moments early on in the season, but there were some question marks of like, all right, how good were these defenses that he was facing? And then you go into an environment, first time he's faced a top 10 team, and he comes out with that type of performance.
I thought the line was great because I thought he had time, and I thought the pocket was pretty clean. Georgia Tech does back the quarterback a lot, and the offensive line for NC State was fantastic and reflected that they were playing against a defensive front that doesn't pierce the pocket with at least a great regularity statistically, and they reflected that. And so CJ with time, is for a lot of other quarterbacks. Like if you give them time, they're far better. But CJ, he just was off at Notre Dame. Like he's a sophomore. He's not a robot. Look, like Tom Brady's not perfect, right? Like the best of the best are not like always perfectly dialed in. I mean, CJ's obviously a great quarterback, and he's had enough big moments. I do think that was probably the best he's been. I think that's probably his best game, right? And you're home against the top 10 team. He's throwing dimes to guys like and you mentioned contested catches, balls were put in good places. He was finding open guys on broken plays off schedule, and then putting it on accurately. I think he was the best he's been, and it's about as good as it's going to get. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, about 350 yards and what was it, 3 touchdowns in total. It's that's it, right? Like, so I thought he was great. I was happy for him. I think I get the sense from what I've heard from Coach Doran say, and just observing him, he can be hard on himself, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in some way that's good. And I've seen other really great quarterbacks be hard on themselves. Cam Ward was really hard on himself. #1 overall draft pick last year. Like he kind of beat himself up a little bit. You just don't want to cross over into that territory where you're grinding yourself down and you're not able to get out of your own way. And so I think CJ is learning how to do some of that maybe. And Coach Doran went right to him after the game in Notre Dame and was like, "Hey, it happens. You know,
Yeah.
this is part of the deal. Notre Dame's a hard place to play. It's a really good team. It's a really good defense." And you know, the past couple of weeks he wasn't great, and he was great against Georgia Tech. So I'm happy for him.
I was going to say at the same time, the alternate of that was, right afterwards, after the game on Saturday, I mean, we got pictures of it. Doran runs into the middle of the field, fans all over them. And before he splits to go talk to, the ACC network or ESPN, he embraces CJ Bailey in the middle of the field. You saw like a big hug, and obviously he did the same thing with several other players, but you felt that was a moment for CJ. Like, yes, yeah. I mean, he said he doesn't pay attention to the outside noise, but obviously it's there. And for any quarterback, it's going to be there, whether or not you performed well or not. If the team loses, people are going to put that on their shoulders as much as they do the head coach. So it's just really cool to see that moment for him. One thing I wanted to ask you really quickly before I let you go, though, just behind the scenes, working with Tony Haynes over the past year and a half now at this point. I mean, what has that been like to work with him, a guy that, obviously has been working for multiple decades now at this point, covering NC State, was there for the first game at what was Entertainment and Sports Arena before it's moved over. But, what were your thoughts on working with him over the past year and a half?
Yeah, I love Tony Haynes. I've loved working with him. I feel I'm so glad you asked, because I love an opportunity to talk about Tony, and I will the rest of my career. Tony's made me better. He's made me a better interviewer. He's made me a better broadcaster. I've learned from Tony. He gave me the warmest welcome to NC State. He couldn't have been more gracious on a professional level and a personal level. I've shared beverages with Tony. I plan to in the future. Tony enjoys an old fashioned or two. And I look forward to doing that with him and he's great. He's a pro. Tony, Tony's enduring broadcast legacy, I think, for his just about 40 years in the triangle is he is a pro's pro. I mean, Mike Krzyzewski wrote him a note after when we were in Durham. He left him a note in the booth, and it said to Tony Haynes, "You're a great broadcaster in the ACC. You did great for Duke, but you are a pro." And I think what Tony does so well, and that Dave Doran and Kevin Keats and Gottfried and Mike Krzyzewski and any coach he's worked with will reflect, is Tony, in a way that I know I could be better. Like I'm self-aware. I try to be self-aware of strengths and weaknesses, and what are other guys doing and how do they do it. And Tony will ask a hard question, but he'll ask it in the right way, right?
Yeah.
Like, especially we're so embedded. I wear the logo, right? Like I'm so behind the curtain. I'm traveling with the team, and I love that. I love the relationship I have. But at the same time, then you want to be able to be candid and honest. And the coaches here are really good about that. Dave Doran and Will Wade will answer. Like, you can ask them hard questions and they're not going to get offended. You know what I mean? They don't. And fans don't want to hear just cotton candy. You can feed vegetables, but Tony makes it particularly palatable without sounding like an attack. He just wants to get to the truth. He wants to get to the bottom of the story. He wants to ask them in ways that are probably the best way to put it is you can ask a hard question and ask the right question without making it feel like he's got a tiki torch and a spear, and he just wants to know what's going on. And I love that about Tony. I think he's a great writer. He's got a fantastic now innate sense of pacing with the way he delivers. There's a performance element to being in broadcast, right, media. So he's done it forever, and it's second nature for him. And I've thrown him curveballs with timing, and likewise him to me in ways that are we knew we got it right. Like there's no issue. For instance, we were late in Charlottesville. No, the team was late. I forget the circumstance. We were early with Howard Baum and Tony after the bowl game. That's what it was, and Modlin was already there. But we're in Charlottesville for basketball, and I was getting the interview with Coach Keats, and I wasn't going to make airtime, which was kind of by design in that I knew Tony had it. Like I told him, I was like, "Hey, I'm not sure we'll swing it." And he's like, I got it. I've done this 38 years, Chaz. Like it's fine, you know. So it's great. It's great. It was just fun, and he was fun. Yeah. He's no sweat. So he's awesome. You know, I feel grateful. I could go on and on. I'm really glad you asked, and I just think the world of the guy, and I'm disappointed I don't get to work more with him. I'm grateful for the time I've had with him, but I am like happy for him that he's in a place where he's, you know, in a retirement stage and feels really good about that. And you know, not that I'm not super excited to work with Chucky and whatever else comes with football, but Tony's the man. He's great.
Yeah, I was going to say, you know, his time with NC State goes so far back that he used to write stories for GoPack after games and, you know, put up recaps and things along those lines. So it's interesting to go back and look at some of those because you realize like this is a guy that's having to like come up with what his story is going to be while he's on the broadcast. So it's just a completely different world. I mean, it's probably a good thing that people don't have to do that anymore. But it's interesting to go back and look at that sometimes. And, you know, at the same time, I wanted to ask you too about working with Chucky. I know obviously you've only been able to work 2 games with him, but you guys have shared practices together. I'm sure shared some time where you can kind of figure out exactly how you guys want to work together. But what have you seen from him in terms of the energy that he's brought? Because obviously being a former player at NC State, winning an ACC championship, being a 13-year NBA vet and playing on 12 different NBA teams, I mean, I'm sure he brings something that maybe it's completely new to you as well.
Chucky's awesome. I feel so lucky to be working with Chucky Brown. He's a pro. You know, he's been doing all these broadcasts. Like I didn't know. He was Compass Media's big East Coast national guy. So he'd done games like all over, basically east of the Mississippi. I think he was their go-to guy for 3, 4, 5 years, whatever it was. So he's done big games in the Big Ten. You know, he'd done like Wisconsin, Purdue. He'd done like Illinois games. He's done a couple Duke UNCs. He did Louisville, Miami, and all with some great broadcasters. The guy who does the Packers. He worked with Bill Rosinski. He'd worked with really, really talented guys. So Chucky comes in with a ton of experience. So he knows how to broadcast. He's authentically himself. He's been picked apart a million different ways and heard it all over a decade in the NBA. You know, the guys have been interviewed in his locker with his shirt off after how many NBA games for 13 years. And he's won an NBA championship. You know, he came here from New York City as a player and told me it was Coach Valvano who made this an undeniable destination for him. He was recruited by Kansas. He was recruited by the biggest schools in the country. He wanted to play for Coach V. He wanted to be part of the pack. He's never left, you know, and so he loves this place. He's really doing this not only to, you know, be a broadcaster and have fun with it, but it kind of in service of the pack, like of this place that he loves. I mean, 40 years ago he got here. He's 57. So when he's 17 years old, he got here as a player. 40 years later, I asked him last night on the air. I was like, "What's this like? Is this a little surreal for you?" This was on the air. We were like, "Is this wild?" He's like, "If you'd asked me 40 years ago, I'd be, you know, all ACC, win ACC championships, regular season and postseason, go to the NBA for 10 years, come back, have a family, and now wear the red and white on the broadcast." He's like, "Pinch me. Like, this is incredible. You know, it's a storybook thing." So you can feel that, but he's very comfortable. You know, he's very comfortable on the air. He understands how to do this because it's a vulnerable thing. You know, people are listening to you, and it's inherently personal. I do think it's important not to never ever make it about the broadcaster, but it is one's voice and one's sort of likeness to a degree. And so for Chucky, he's very comfortable in his own skin. And I think that comes across. He's incredibly likable. Like, to know Chucky immediately, to get to know Chucky is to love the guy. And so I think that comes across right away. There's a kindness, there's a warmth. However, what's really refreshing also is, like, in the exhibition, because there's a standard of NC State basketball, in the exhibition, he didn't like some of the defensive switches that were going on when South Carolina was up 11.
Mm-hmm.
And he said right away, that's not going to work. He's like, Darion and Van Allen, Lubin, when they're out down low, we're getting torched at the iron. And then Will Wade came on, and he asked him in his own roundabout way. He asked him, and Will Wade was like, yeah, we changed that. We took a timeout, and we had to make that adjustment, and we had to switch it. So it was like, oh, these guys, he knows exactly what's going on, and
he's like an assistant over there with you. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is beautiful. This is great. You'll love this. So I didn't realize that Chucky coached Ben McCauley on the Lakers G League team. And so, like, like, Chucky's coached dudes. Like, he's a coach, I mean, he was a high school coach. He was then a college coach, right, at a lower level. But, like, the guy really knows ball. And when a lineup comes out and he says, like, oh, I like that, he's not saying it like, it's really not just a fan. Like, he really knows what he's talking about. And for me, I love that. He's super credible. He's going to tell the truth. He's going to say it in support of the pack. Last night, he and I had a little bit of a debate about whether or not Jerry Dang should have been called for that foul down in the post. We were having some fun with it. Pack's up by 50. And he's like, I don't think that's a good call. And I was like, Will Wade didn't like it. I don't know. I thought there's a little bit of shiver there from Jerry. Debatable. Maybe not. I don't know. Let's talk about it. So he's super fun. We can be honest and say how it is, but also, like, be in support of the team, which is what this is. I don't shy away from that. So I feel so grateful and lucky and excited to have worked with Tony and now work with Chucky. And I think it's kind of a credit to NC State. Like, this place offers the fans and the venues and the practice facilities, and then the resources to broadcast and, like, to make the broadcast great. Like, there's so much I can't control in all that, but there are all these talent around. There's all these people. There's all these wonderful people. So it's really special.
Yeah, I was going to say too, one of the things that he talked about as well was, like, yes, he's been connected to NC State for 40 plus years now at this point. And even when he was in the NBA, he talked about the fact that several of the guys, like, everywhere he went, regardless of what team he was with, like, he was always wearing an NC State sweatshirt. Like, whenever they went to games, it was like, all right, NC State sweatshirt. And then, once he gets there, change into all of his different stuff. But, like, if you met him, you knew where he played college. You knew what he was proud of, where he came from, and all those different things. And it's like, he never lost that regardless of where he went. So I think it's really cool to see him come back home and get this moment for him. And potentially, as he mentioned last night, he's like, I'm hoping to do this for, like, another 15 years. Like, I don't want this to just be like, oh, I came home and it was great for a couple of years and blah, blah, blah. Like, no, this is what I want to do. So it's really awesome to see that. And I got to go back and listen to the broadcast. I haven't had a chance to listen to it, but I can't wait to see what you guys bring to that broadcast and all these different things too. So, Matt, I really appreciate you jumping on. And where can people follow you as well if they're not already on social media?
Sure. Well, M_Chaz on Twitter. I'm a pretty boring Twitter follow. Let's be. I like being really honest about it. Like, if I've got something, I'll rip it. And please feel free. Don't expect fireworks on social media from your guy here. I really kind of cherish my moments on the air with Chucky, with Johnny, with Tony. That's my time, where, I put in all this time and prep and work, and I go to practices and whatnot. And then you can kind of taste the pain. Like, I pour my heart out into that, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 hours, whatever we are on the air. But I do appreciate the spirit of what you're asking. I'm not trying to poo-poo you trying to help me out and all that. But I like being honest. I like being as absolutely honest as I can. And yeah, I'm on Twitter, M_Chaz. I wouldn't recommend it on Instagram. It's just pictures of my 5-year-old and me. It's really, yeah, which is the most
and not
important
your
thing in my life.
5-year-old, 9-year-old, and 3-year-old. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
All right. Well, Matt, thank you so much for jumping on with us, man. I'm hoping to do this again probably later in the season once we know a little bit more about this basketball team, once we see the final result for the football team and all these different things too. But Matt, I really appreciate your time, man.
Thanks, Cory. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
All right. Well, thank you again to everybody for listening. We will talk to you again soon.